Empower to Integrate, a collaborative initiative by Aditus Foundation and the African Media Association Malta. This program is dedicated to advancing integration and social inclusion for third country nationals in Malta. It is funded by the Asylum, Migration and Integration Fund, co-funded by the European Union and carried out in collaboration with the Parliamentary Secretariat for European Funds.
Welcome to the Empower to Integrate project. This is a platform for third country nationals to boost their visibility, amplify their voices, and share their perspective. It's also an opportunity to strengthen community and social ties within Malta. Hello and welcome. I'm Nazli Mayo, and I'm the project lead strategist and radio show host. Today we will be talking about they have a different way of living. And we're going to delve a little bit deeper into how invisible masks impact migrant people, as they often adapt to cope, survive, and integrate in new environments for self-protection. This includes themes such as identity, code switching, emotional resilience and well-being, stigma, discrimination, and the impact of prolonged stress, depression, rejection, and shame. And joining me in the studio today is Ghita Ramdhiansing. Hello and welcome, Ghita.
Thank you, Nazli, for having me.
It's a pleasure. Ghita is a founder, strategic advisor, and global keynote speaker with over 30 years of experience at the intersection of human interaction and decision-making. She founded C-Suite, an interaction intelligence company that helps leaders recognize and address patterns affecting alignment, trust, and performance, especially when working under pressure. She also works with executives and institutions across corporate and public sectors, using observation-based frameworks. She helps them navigate the invisible forces that influence trust and collaboration and influence in order to make interaction dynamics actionable. And she's the author of Good Enough to Get Ahead and People the Manual. Ghita divides her time between Malta and the Netherlands. I'd also like to give a warm welcome to Bernard Laus. Hello and welcome, Bernard.
Hello, thank you for having me.
It's a
Quite
pleasure.
Excited to be here.
Thank you very much. Bernard is a committed Gestalt psychotherapist with 10 years of experience in mental health, notably through his work at the Richmond Foundation in Malta. As the manager of the Psychological Support Service, he collaborates with the team to provide accessible psychological support and has been involved in delivering training programs like mental health, first aid and safety intervention, as well as other well-being training across Malta and Europe. Ghita, from your professional experience, could you share one strategy that migrant leaders can use when making decisions whilst under pressure, managing emotional stress, and interacting with diverse groups of people?
Well, I would like to say that it's not necessarily that they are struggling with the decision making, but it's more the interaction itself. And my advice would be to separate the emotions from the actual decision. And I think that's basically the struggle, because they want to do a lot of things at the same time. Mm-hmm. You know, take the right type of decision, but also they are considering also how they are perceived. So while there's a lot of things going on internally, okay, how am I perceived? How is the decision that I'm taking or presenting in here perceived? And so I would my tip would be separate those two. Focus on the quality of the decision making and handle those emotions separately. But I think you can tell more about that part.
Thank you very much. Bernard, could you briefly explain the role of a Gestalt psychotherapist and how we can help migrants integrate in Malta as well as build on their psychological well-being?
Definitely. Well, a Gestalt psychotherapist at the end of the day works in the Gestalt framework, right? And the target is that we focus on present moment awareness, we focus on responsibility, personal responsibility, and also build a connection between thoughts, emotions, and behavior. We also look into the past. What were those experiences that the person went through, right? What the migrant went through, that needs to kind of be addressed. They need to be understood, right? But we don't stop there. We also help a person to really delve into how am I feeling right now? What are my reactions? What are the patterns that I used to have, which I'm still reacting right now? Okay. The thing is, it's not just Gestalt therapy that can help migrants in settling or being part of our community. It's all the forms of therapy. We have Gestalt, you have EMDR, you have systemic, so which is family and couples. So therapy in itself helps you to kind of support the migrant to process their sense of self. Well, the migrant has went through a big journey where their sense of self have been kind of deteriorated through the journey, through the challenges, right? We also give the space for a person to process those challenges. Well, we were speaking about the emotions. Therapy gives you the space to sit with those emotions, process them, understand them, and then you can make your own decision there. So you have what we call kind of that mental clarity going on, right? It's also about improving those relationships. Relationships are the fundamentality of society, of culture. And we know that migrants struggle with building up these relationships. It requires more effort to build them and to keep them, right? Especially in our society at the moment. So it gives people perspective. It gives people understanding. So that is a very small nutshell of what Gestalt therapy is all about, really.
Thank you very much. It's quite insightful and ties into what Ghita was talking about in terms of how to separate the emotions and decisions at work. Ghita, many migrants talk about code switching, adapting how they speak, behave, or conduct themselves in the workplace. How does this constant shifting affect someone's sense of identity and authenticity over time?
Well, I think code switching is a very important skill in the first place, because in the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you're from. The minute that you enter a room, and it doesn't matter which room you're entering, you're switching codes, adapting to the context, maybe the hierarchy in an organization. So I would say, are you losing your identity? I think when in a professional setting, you're applying for a job. The company is hiring you for a particular role. So yeah, you need to adapt to the context in there, to the roles, the role itself, the tasks that you have. So yeah, you're not taking that role with you to your home or to your personal life. At least I hope not. So yeah, I hope I'm answering your question in properly in that sense. You know, I don't know where this. I can't predict where the struggle is. You know, what is the struggle that they're facing? You know, you're not fake in the end of the day. It's just adapting to the situation, and that's something that we're doing all the time.
Yeah. That also stems from a place of self-protection, doesn't it? Because although you're saying in the workplace, I would adapt to the company's ethos or the work environment or what it is that they're presenting, there is still the human being. So when you leave the office, do you then go back to being yourself, or do you continue being as you are in the office, in the workplace?
Well, no, go ahead.
The adapting to different situations, different scenarios is an ongoing process. And doing that all the time requires a lot of mental energy, a lot of thought focus. And this leads to a person to be very much mentally tired, mentally drained. So I think this plays a big part here in the well-being, the psychological well-being of a person. So,
you know, but there is always this core that needs to stay consistent in that sense. So code switching is not only about protecting, it's also about belonging. And you adapt to a certain context, even if it would be today I'm wearing a blazer because the radio host is wearing a blazer. We're building rapport. Now, of course, you and I know each other but still, you kind of. You want to fit in.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks very much. Bernard, what are some of the emotional and social challenges that migrants commonly face that might not be immediately visible to other people in society?
Okay. I think the first thing that comes to mind is that element of uncertainty that a migrant is exposed to, right? The uncertainty of the legal status. How do I navigate this whole system? What about the financial situation? How do I try to find accommodation? How do I keep up with the accommodation? So this sense of uncertainty is something that really challenges the person. Two things I do want to point out as well is that they carry a lot of sense of loneliness. Right? As much as there are communities that support the migrant, they have to carry a lot of responsibility by themselves. So that loneliness can fester into much more serious complications in their well-being. And there's guilt, which we also need to address and to speak about. Well, the person, because of what they went through, because having to leave their country, they had to leave also their family and their friends. So they're left, in order to improve my well-being and in order to improve my sense of life, my quality of life, I had to make this decision and leave the person behind me. So what is happening to the people I've left? Are they faring well? I can't see them. Probably the family, the friends, want to protect them from what is really going on. So this is something that we see. That guilt, if not addressed, if it is not worked on, it can also manifest into quite some different well-being problems, right? There's also grief that we need to address as well. What was their journey? What was their experience in what they have seen, right?
Thank you. Ghita, from your perspective, migrants may have patterns that they're not fully aware of, such as invisible masks. How do these masks form, and what purpose do they serve them psychologically and socially?
You know, you build masks to blend in. You know, it's a new environment. You need to try new things, like you were saying, and you know, you try to read the responses and what works. And you know, it's, of course we're discussing this in a migrant context, but you know, it's basically what children do too. What works well with the parents, or you know, with mom and dad, and what not. And actually, a mask can be intellectually intelligent in that sense, because it teaches you how do you get in the room, and of course there is a downside to it, because at some point in life it can even also limit you in a way. So what you see happening is that you see migrants overperforming. You see that they are agreeing all the time with the dominant culture, or maybe, you know, in a work context with the boss, you know, all that kind of things of adapting to the context.
Thank you. Because sometimes also we don't want to lose our identity as migrant people when through these invisible masks and code switching. So you find a lot of times you'll be asked the question, you're so articulate. Where did you speak, learn to speak good English? Or you find that you wear your hair differently so that you can fit in. Whereas at home it's, you might just be an untidy, messy bun. So it's these kinds of things we're saying in the workplace, particularly from your experience and expertise. How can people then assimilate into the workplace but not lose themselves?
How not to lose yourself? I think it's good to have people like you, have therapists to learn to recognize those emotions, those insecurities, all those patterns that you have learned, to not only learn about your layers, but get back to the core where you're coming from. We through our entire lives we learn a lot of things, and then we come to a quarter life crisis to discover, or later in life to unlearn all sorts of things. So I think that what you were saying is very much on point. To help migrants in this journey of exploring emotions, how patterns have developed, how relationships have developed over the years, and how they are applying it in the current context.
It's also about trying to see beyond that mask. How we have this label, even the word itself, migrant, refugee. The reality is, let's kind of not forget who you really are. You have your own interests, you have your own talents, you have your own education. So I think helping a migrant to get to that terms, to remember who they really are, that can bring a sense of empowerment. We spoke about decisions before,
Yeah.
right? Getting in touch with who you really are, being authentic yourself, despite what is happening, can really empower someone. I like to use the word person and migrant interchangeably. For me, everyone is a person,
Yeah.
right? So I'm
Yeah.
not someone who uses labels. So
And I do think from a migrant perspective, it's then you know how to operate in this new society, and then you need to have to do some explaining to the to the environment where you came from. So
It's true, because sometimes we'll be told, when speaking to family, back home, is that you're too westernized, and because you're adapting to the situation, it becomes normal for you, but then your family who might say that you're too western. You're like, how, because it's some things also you grow and adapt in the new environment. It's true. Yeah, thank you. So Bernard, in the workplaces, we don't always see mental health struggles clearly. What are some of the less visible signs like disconnection, anger, withdrawal, or mood swings that colleagues and employees could be more aware of?
There's quite a couple of situations. Distress is not just represented in sadness, right? It's not just about crying. Most of the time, distress is blocked in, people tend to be numb, and that is still an element of distress, right? One thing that we see in the workplace is this withdrawal, right? Avoiding meetings, not participating in meetings. It's also kind of, there's a social event happening, it's fun, it's about to have fun, and the person feels not safe enough, not welcomed enough to attend, right? There's this idea of also being disconnected from what is happening. It's the idea of being physically present, but mentally not there, right? An element of irritability and anger also shows up. And we also see overworking, right? Taking on too many jobs, trying to keep up with everything, trying to always be on the go. And this is something that really needs to be looked into. So sometimes we really misunderstand a person, a migrant not doing well for an attitude, or this is a performance issue, when in reality, this person is genuinely struggling. Just because a person is not saying that they are not well, right, doesn't mean that they aren't. So it's kind of like, how can we keep an eye out to check with the people who are relatively quiet, right? Let's kind of make an effort to be more inclusive. Let's kind of check in. I like the idea of checking. I'm going to look at the camera, so look at the camera is important. It's important that we check into people regardless of who they are.
Start asking an open question.
I'm going to use the cameras now, right?
Yeah.
When you're meeting, and coming on to you, Ghita, from a leadership point of view and the training and consulting that you do for leaders, when you say checking in, what more can, we're talking about in Maltese workplaces, what more can leaders do to check in? And we don't mean from a tick boxing exercise.
Yeah, well, of course, checking, ask the open question.
Yeah.
And I think instead of, put that label away, you're talking to a person, have a candid conversation. This morning I was talking to somebody and said, I have never seen somebody going to the office and now today I'm going to deliver a shitty job. Everybody wants to contribute, and I think that's important. Explore, learn the new landscape. That's what would be my first book, and of course there's much more to tell about that, but maybe that's for some other episode.
We're speaking about leadership here, right? I think we also need to speak about representation at the end of the day.
Yes.
If you are with a team and you have an employee, right, who's worked very hard, they really dedicated, they have managerial skills and leadership skills, give them that promotion, allow them to kind of be there and represent, hey, yes, I have a past history of being a migrant, but here I am, I can also be part of management. Having that member there in top management can really be empowering for other people, and it says a lot about your company as well, if I'm being honest.
Thank you for sharing that. And if I could just ask you another question, what does it mean to really be able to create psychological safety in the workplace and even in communities to support migrants, to help them feel more seen and valued? Like you're saying, if somebody has got the skill set, promote them.
That is part of it, really. So we can speak about active inclusion. We've been speaking about the checking in. I like to use this example, right? It's on the base of human connection. we do spend some time on our phones, right, at work. We all do it. And we see something funny, we see a meme today. And it's like, show it. Just kind of be human in the connection that we do. Even if you're a manager, if you're a senior manager, if you're just like at the same level, be human. Interact the way you interact with everyone. And I also think that we need to establish a sense of trainings, right? The migrant, unfortunately, carries a lot of traumatic experiences. Let's teach and support management and the teams to understand what trauma really is and how do we handle it. Why is that person quiet? Why are they struggling? Why do they always call sick leave? Well, probably because they have psychosomatic symptoms. So creating a sense of awareness of what the person might have gone through, seeing the story behind the person, can really make the person feel safe. And psychological safety at the workplace is about feeling safe, being able to take risks, to support the team and to support the company. It's about being able to make mistakes and you're okay with it. You make mistakes and say, hey, manager, I kind of messed up here. Can you please help me? Right? So I think this is very, very important. And for example, create cultural sensitivity communities. You know, if you know that you have migrants and they come from different backgrounds, different culture, invite them to lead a cultural day, right? So having a community within the workplace that is open, inclusive, supportive, I think is brilliant. I think this is where we need to go. Look at the camera, make an emphasis.
Thank you very much, Bernard. And what I'm also taking away from what you're saying is being able to build this relationship on trust and rapport that helps people feel psychologically safe as well.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And Ghita, from your perspective, psychologically and behaviorally, how can Maltese workplaces and communities better recognize these invisible struggles we're talking about, so that even when migrants feel that they're performing, but performing in the right way to get promoted or get paid for their, the value that they bring to the company?
Well, I think, well, there you go. Again, checking in. But I would also say to the migrant, make yourself heard.
Definitely.
Don't wait till the opportunity will knock on the door. Voice yourself in when you have the opportunity to tell what you see. I think the migrant has, in general, depending on which country they're coming from, tendency of holding themselves back. Not speaking up about certain topics. They wait till they're offered something or they're given something. And sometimes, I'm not going to say that you immediately need to take your place, but we'll take your space. And I think the minute that you are taking your space, you become visible. And I think those are subtle ways for migrants, as a tip, to show yourself in different networking places, events or whatever. But and towards the Maltese community, I would say, invite them to the table. It's not only about differences; it's also about what do we have in common. Everybody wants, in the end of the day, to contribute in a working context, like I just mentioned. There's nobody wakes up and said, "Okay, I'm not doing this." Yeah, okay, that's a different topic, but you get what I mean.
Yeah, but even in those situations, is to get to understand if you get to work and you're not in the mood, or you kick the cat on the way out, or you shouted at your partner, or your child's just been screaming to get into the car. By the time you get in, you now got to adapt. So it's also like you're saying, check in, ask the question. But on the same side, what you've just been talking about is for us to also give ourselves permission to say, I want to have a seat at the table. What am I bringing? I know that I'm worthy. I've got value. So give yourself permission to do it. And on the other side, you're also saying for employers to also say, well, let's sit around the table and see what we can do, together to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. I think entrepreneurship is one of those topics that I'm really like, okay, I think we can learn much more from migrants because they don't have these lovely plans that we have here in Europe. So invite them to tell their stories about their countries, how entrepreneurship works, how their systems work, and learn from both scenarios. Yeah.
and to trust yourself in this process.
Yeah.
It's kind of from both the employer perspective, trust that this is the right way, and also for the migrant to trust themselves, their journey, and what they went through. Because at the end of the day, the migrant is one resilient person.
Yeah.
So that is something we really need to acknowledge.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. And we've come to the end of our questions for today. So thank you very much, Ghita and Bernard, for joining us, sharing your expertise, your experiences, and your little tidbits, which I'm sure will make a lot of employees and employers, grow a long way. And thank you for tuning in today and for watching and listening. And goodbye from us.
Empower to Integrate, a collaborative initiative by Aditus Foundation and the African Media Association Malta. This program is dedicated to advancing integration and social inclusion for third country nationals in Malta. It is funded by the Asylum, Migration and Integration Fund, co-funded by the European Union and carried out in collaboration with the Parliamentary Secretariat for European Funds.